Hello everyone, my name is Carlos. Welcome to It's Complicated. Today I want to talk to you about one of my favorite watches in my collection, the Tissot Heritage 1973. So this is a Tissot Heritage 1973. This is a race-inspired chronograph. The interesting thing about this chronograph is that it came out quite some time ago, and this particular one was a limited release of exactly 1,973 watches, which is kind of ridiculous because it's not a very small run for it to really be limited. 2,000 watches. It's quite a large run of watches. But anyways, this particular configuration, this Panda dial, it's not really being made anymore. However, you can get this particular watch in something very similar to a Panda dial, on an invert Panda dial on the Tissot website. So while this particular limited edition is a little bit harder to find new, the other ones are still being made by Tissot. And I wanted to take the time to make this video because I personally think that this is probably the best chronograph that Tissot makes. I definitely think that's much nicer than the PRX. And there's an interesting story about how I came about this chronograph. I actually purchased it twice, and so it marks a very specific sort of like evolution in my watch collecting journey. So the first time that I picked it up, I paid retail for it, which was like $2,200, and that was just way too much money at the time for me to really be able to appreciate this watch, so I ended up returning it. And then about 8 months later, I actually found it on Nordstrom's Rack, which is an outlet to a major department store here in the United States, and it was brand new on sale for $1,150, which is like insane. Nordstrom Rack was also an authorized dealer of Tissot, so when I purchased the watch, not only did I get a new watch, but I got a like fully minted, correctly signed warranty card, which was amazing. But the thing that was that's very special to me about this particular watch, it was the first time that when I purchased the watch and I looked at the finish, I really kind of started understanding what to look for when it comes to good fit and finish. And so I think that's why maybe this is one of the most sort of high-end chronographs that Tissot offers. Now, for those of you that don't know about Tissot, Tissot is a Swiss brand. It is part of the Swatch Umbrella. Some of its sister companies are Hamilton, Mido, Certina, and its big brothers would be like Valjoux and Omega. And there's a bunch of other brands. It goes up from there, but obviously Tissot is no joke. It's an old company. It's been kind of the entry level for luxury. Hey folks, if you're liking this video, please take a second to like and subscribe. It goes a long way towards encouraging me to make more of this content. Now back to the video. One of the reasons why I wanted to take the time to point out this chronograph, even though it's kind of an older chronograph, is because since it is an older chronograph, there is some amazing deals online where you can save tons of money and get them drastically reduced. So definitely if you're a watch collector, if you're looking for a really nice Swiss-made Valjoux racing chronograph in either a Panda dial or a reverse Panda dial, I think that this is a watch you might want to consider. So usually when I start talking about these watches and I'm reviewing them, one of the first things that I kind of like to talk about is the fit and finish. And as I mentioned in the introduction, one of the things that's very special about this particular watch is that when I first got it, you know, I had a lot of more inexpensive watches, and so the price, the MSRP of $2,000 kind of got into my head. And when I got the Chrono, I was looking at it and I kind of didn't feel like it was that nice. And anyways, a few months passed after I returned the chronograph, and since then I had purchased Seiko Presage GMT, which was my first watch that I paid a little bit more than $1,000 for. And so when this one actually showed up out of like a random search that I did on Google on that Nordstrom's Rack webpage at such a low price, I picked it up. And I don't know if it's the fact that I've matured a little bit more on my watch journey, or the fact that maybe saving over $1,000 helped me sort of have a more appreciation for this watch. But the first thing that I noticed is that bar none, the case finish on this watch is so ridiculously crisp. I mean, this is a perfect example of a case that is simple, but that it has just completely immaculate finish. And so when it comes to the finish, what you're going to see is you're going to see first the case. In the case, you're going to see that the sides have this really nice brushing, and then they have these rounded bevels that are incredibly nicely polished, and then the top of the watch, kind of like the face where the crystal sits, has a radial sunburst brushing on it. And the thing that's really spectacular about this watch is that the transition between finishes is razor sharp. Not that you can actually cut yourself with it, but that's how clean the transitions are between the different brushed surfaces and the polish. Even though there's some micro scratches just from daily use, you can still tell just how precisely finished this watch is. And I don't know if it's because it's the special edition or because it's one of Tissot's more expensive offerings that they sort of put a little bit more time and care into it. But really the finish is the star of this particular watch, and especially the case and those transitions between finishes, just completely amazing. A really good example of like what proper finish should be. So after we look at the case, we move directly into the dial. And one of the things that's really interesting about the dial is that obviously it really sort of leans into that retro 1970s look of racing chronographs, which means that the tri-compact dials are gonna be sunk, but all of the markers are printed across the dial, including the tachometer scale that is also part of the dial. Very, very beautiful dial, very cleanly printed. Tissot at the top. You have the 3 complications for the chronograph. You're running seconds, you're running minutes, and you're running hours. The minutes is an interesting one because it is a 30-minute track, which means that when you look at tracking the hours will basically be tracked in half-hour increments. But that means that this chronograph can keep track not just of minutes, but also of a 12-hour span. Kind of a cool thing, kind of a Le Mans endurance racing kind of vibe to it. Another awesome detail is the minute hand, the hour hand, and the chrono seconds hand, which have that beautiful hit of orange that makes it really visible. And an extra little detail that I think is phenomenal is how the arrowhead of the second hands merges perfectly with the Tissot logo with a T to kind of create one ongoing kind of shape. And so it's just really meticulously made, perfectly printed, and just really cool and elegant, just how that second hand lines up with that T so perfectly to create sort of like this perfect symmetry and this perfect continuation of the T and the arrowhead. This watch does have a 4:30 date. That's something that people are probably not gonna be very excited about, or at least there's a lot of people that don't like that. For me, I personally don't mind it. I think that he's done tastefully. It's never really bothered me. And I'm a person that likes dates in his watch. Like I miss it when I don't have a date complication on my watch. So I'm happy that he has it and he doesn't get in the way of the dials by trying to put it at 6 o'clock or 3 o'clock. So but based on the utility of this type of chronograph, I think that it makes sense where the date is. And it looks really nice, you know, it has that little black border around it to sort of make it stand out a little bit more. And the printing of the numbers is just clean and easy to read. And my eyes are not that good, but it works really, really well for me. So just really great execution of the dial. Obviously you have the cream color, you have the black, you have the whole Panda vibe. I really like that the second hand is white. And so that kind of breaks it apart to let you know that that's not part of the chronograph complication. Not that they needed to do that, but I think it's neat that they did. And I think that while some might think that he throws the design a little bit off balance, I think that I actually like that that particular dial, since it's not part of that chronograph complication, has its own little way of standing out. All right, so the case back on this particular version of the Heritage 1973 is really nice. It's a sapphire case back, so you do have a direct look at the movement. I think that's one of the things that's really great about this particular chronograph compared to another entry-level chronograph, such as like the Hamilton Intramatic. And one of the things that's special about this particular special edition of the Heritage 1973 is that it actually comes with a special oscillator that is different on the other non-limited versions. And so it has this gold oscillator that I think gives it a slightly more sort of special touch, a little bit more prestigious. Now, I don't think it's real gold. My guess is that they just basically just maybe like a PVD coating or something like that. But anyways, I think that is something that is kind of special about the watch, the fact that it has this sort of little extra detail of that gold water. And as a matter of fact, it's one of the reasons when I was trying to get this watch, the fact that this watch is the perfect Panda dial and it doesn't have like those extra accents of blue that the non-limited version has, and that it had the gold rotor, honestly, it was one of those things that like those details made me want to have this particular version. And it's one of the reasons why I didn't settle for getting the less expensive non-limited version of the Panda dial. So obviously these watches did not have a bracelet made for them. They were kind of designed to be worn on straps. And for the most part, I think that the racing straps that they came up with these particular watches are really nice. You have kind of like a bolstered, perforated watch strap that is super comfortable, is super soft, and I believe that the other ones that are non-limited actually came with brown straps. So something that's a little bit special about it. So overall, really comfortable, really nice leather strap. I think the only thing that is kind of weird about this watch and the strap is that I find that Swiss watches, for the most part, come with relatively small leather straps. I have an 8-inch wrist. So one of the things that I notice is that sometimes I don't have enough of the band left to actually be able to secure it with a second keeper. But for the most part, as I said, just really nice, very comfortable leather band that is just really well put to match sort of like the whole racing theme and just makes the watch look very elegant, but at the same time, very sporty. So yeah, definitely a good strap for these watches. So let's talk about accuracy real quick. Based on the readings that I got when I first got the watch and I put it on the chronograph, I tested 6 positions. So the fastest position was +8 seconds and the slowest position was +4 seconds. That means that the max gap between the slowest and the fastest position was only 4 seconds. So that's a phenomenal movement. I really believe that a movement like this has the ability to run COSC, like maybe wouldn't pass COSC certification because there's other elements just on how well the watch runs, but definitely a watch that has a very small gap of differences between positions, with those 4 seconds being sort of like the max distance, which means that this is an incredibly accurate movement. And I think that this is really where the Swiss competition kind of starts moving away from some of the more inexpensive watches under $1,000, whether it's micro brands or whether it's, you know, Chinese watches or even Japanese movements, which are all really great on their own right. But once you get into the Swiss movements like the Valjoux and the Era 28, 29, like the majority of the movements just have such little discrepancy across positions that most of them just have like a lot of potential when it comes to being able to fine tune them. And they're meant to be worked on. So they have really good regulation systems that, you know, are very easy to work with without risking the possibility of damaging your watch. As I said, the price is an interesting one because right now the non-limited versions were the same price as this limited one. So all of them sort of came out at $2,200. The non-limited ones can be found on eBay much cheaper than that. So they're still available. This is not a discontinued watch. So it's something that you can still, if you want to go and buy it new from Tissot, go ahead and do it. But I would definitely suggest that you look at Joma Shop, Ashford, and maybe even eBay, and you're going to save yourself $600 to $700. I think the last one that I saw on Joma Shop, the Panda dial, which as I said is not the limited one, so it's a slightly different version, but it's still a Panda dial, I want to say was a little bit under $1,600, saving $600 right off the bat. And you know, if you're worried about purchasing gray market and what it means to potentially need the warranty on your watch, when it comes to Tissot watches, I don't think you need to worry about this because the Tissot service is really inexpensive. You can go to the Tissot website and see how much they charge to service a chronograph. I believe it's $500. And the cool thing about getting a watch service through Tissot, even if you bought it somewhere else, is that as soon as you get it serviced, they actually renew your warranty for another 2 years. All right, so likes and dislikes. So I mean, as I said, this is one of my favorite watches. You know, I'm a big sucker for Panda dials. I really like chronographs. It's kind of my favorite complication. As I said, there's a lot of details that I really like. I like the display case back. The finish, as I said, is just insane. You guys will see it on the video. It's just really clear and really beautiful how they're able to transition those different finishes through these razor sharp edges edges. I really like Valjoux movements. They're not nearly as fancy as column wheel, but you know, the reality is that most of the chronographs under $4,000 use Valjoux movements. But you know, be very careful, because if you're paying more than, I would say, $2,000 for something in a Valjoux movement, it should be a Valjoux movement that uses a column wheel. If it doesn't have a column wheel, I wouldn't pay that much for it. You know, that second hand on top of the T and how that sort of melts together is also one of the coolest parts of this watch. It's really impressive that they were able to do that. Yeah, man, just the vibe, the whole retro thing, the racing chronograph. I took this watch to MotoGP and had a blast with it. So it's just a great, beautiful, classic styled watch. The dislikes are pretty straightforward. So one of the downsides of Valjoux calibers is that they're kind of chunky and big. And that's something that, yeah, I mean, it's not as elegant, but you know, in order to get thinner, those thinner movements, you're gonna move into a space where you have to pay over $5,000 for a watch. It is what it is, you know, until Sellita or ETA decide to create sort of like a mid-tier Swiss chronograph movement that sports all the features of the Valjoux without the thickness of the Valjoux. Most of the watches in this price range are just going to be kind of hunky. So I think on my 8-inch wrist, it still looks pretty good, but you know, depending on your wrist size, you might be kind of limited on whether you can wear this watch or not. So the last thing that I'll mention that I'm not a super big fan of this watch is the way in which the date is set. On this particular Valjoux movements, you can set the date with a crown. They don't have sort of like a middle position that you can use to do that. The real sort of pain in the ass is having to find a pusher. You know, there's times where I haven't worn this watch for a while. I just want to quickly set the time and set the date, and you know, I'm kind of struggling to try to like find a pumper or find a pen or find something that I can use to press a little plunger. With that said, I have found a little sort of life hack for setting the date. If you pull the crown and you move the hands to midnight until the date changes, you can actually back up the minute hand back to right before 8 o'clock. You back it up and then you move it forward again, and it will actually change the date again. It's just something to keep in mind. But overall, I have to say that, you know, this is a super classy watch. I think it's very special. I think that it doesn't look like anything out there. I'm incredibly happy to have it in my collection, and I was incredibly happy to be patient, wait, and eventually find the right deal to get this watch. Anyways, guys, those are my thoughts for today. This has been the Tissot Heritage 1973. Let me know if you guys like this watch. Let me know what is the most insane deal that you guys have gotten on a watch, and what watch was it? I would love to hear that. Anyways, guys, leave me comments. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like. Really helps the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video. See ya.